You feel happy that everything you need is there, so desirable. The new elements to reduce inequalities, promote sustained, inclusive economic growth, achieve gender equality, be age-friendly, disability-friendly. So anything that you desire for new urban environment is there.
The importance of local governments in UN Habitat was being reduced, where we protested to it. We said that local governments have equal role in terms of urban development, and we need to also, lay proper emphasis on this. And so that's where I think we come from. And we have been working specifically. I must just share here that we've been working with the homeless for the last 16 years. As ActionAid, we started the work way back in 2000, and I have offered this 2 copies of the books to Kirti Bhai and to Pratap Bhanu Mehta ji. The book is City Makers. It's come after 16 years of work with the people on the footpath. We don't call them homeless, we call them city makers, for they have made the city with a certain labor and they have every right to the city.
Encourage, support and facilitate a national discourse on cleaner, healthier, productive, harmonious, people-friendly, technology-savvy, resource-efficient and better governed cities and sustainable urbanization. The letter added, and I quote, "Urbanization is a social change and cultural transition as much as demographic, physical and economic change. It is a silent revolution and therefore it is essential for the people to understand the process, feel the pulse of the change consciously and get ready to contribute to shaping its course. India's urban challenge, as is well known, is massive and complex. Making people aware of its dimensions and articulating them, the steps being taken to meet the challenge would be a creative use of the global event."
The question to us as civil society is, if we are going to make an effective argument against consumption, right? If we are going to make an effective argument against a certain form of urbanization, if we are going to make an effective argument against certain kinds of technology choices, have we actually engaged with those imaginative productions, which one of the challenges of the modern world, which are actually now bubbling up from below daily? People are fashioning and unfashioning themselves, even with the big digital divide, which is real, right? The fact of the matter is, the intellectual construction around any of this is not going to be in anybody's control, right? And my worry is that I see this UN Quito document and it looks like a fossil from an age of high planning, right? I mean, this is like, Sovietism run amok, right? It has no way of acknowledging the fact that this is going to be a process created by the imagination and energies of billions of people who are not going to take dictates from anybody of us, including even a description of them as urban or rural.
That India's urban sector suffered not from infrastructure, not from investment deficiencies, but it suffered, there were structural weaknesses, there were systemic weaknesses in the whole system. And all these were designed in ways that you open up the sector in such a way that market begins to take care of what is otherwise provided by the public sector. So the opening up of the urban sector over the past 25 years with all these changes was a key feature of the urban sector.
This is in conformity with the development idea of India propounded by the founding fathers of the nation, of the Republic, which is sui generis, a society unlike any other in a class of its own that would not follow the Western pattern of mega industrialization, urbanization and individuation. India's would be an agro-based people's economy that would chart out a distinct course in economic growth, which would be need-based, human scale and balanced while conserving nature and livelihood. World-class cities is all right, but we only want India-class cities.
Then from the river, which is a beautiful river, which is about 1.5 kilometers wide, you pull in blue convection. This can bring the ambient temperature down by 3 or 4 degrees. Then if you have just 4-inch walls with a 4-inch air gap and you have reflecting roofs. You can bring the in-house temperature down by another 4-5 degrees, making it at least 10 degrees. So you save a huge amount of power on air conditioning and other things.
And therefore, what kind of urbanization and what kind of sustainability are we talking of in the global south?
Working closely with the natural resource areas, particularly in mining areas, what we are finding our major concerns are violation of human rights, indiscriminate expansion, sudden loss to livelihoods, and complete disturbance of the ecosystems. And who are the losers? The Adivasis, the women, the Dalit, the local cultures, and if you see, they are impacting all the resource-rich areas. The most recent one being, the Hasdo around coal fields, where they want a rail corridor to collect coal from all the coal fields, cutting through some of the best forests, killing lots of elephants.
And these indications, I find it very important because A, it brings in picture the issue of aspirations of the people, B, of course, how the climatic variations are impacting agricultural practices, and C, the kind of migration it is leading to. Of course, people are not migrating to the big cities or the nearby economic powerhouses like Pune or Mumbai or Kolhapur, but they are simply shifting away from their villages to nearby tehsils, and these tehsils have started taking a different shape and a different route.
We talk about how policies are not planning for the reality. Of course, policies are not planning for reality. We talk about smart cities in a city where you can't even house half the people. But the point is that the city plans for itself. When the planners don't plan for the city plans for itself.
A recent study, I think, from a leading corporate estimated that we require about 200,000 hectares of arable agriculture land just to be able to achieve this housing for all 2022. And while the policy speaks a lot about sustainability, I fail to see how any of this is actually going to be sustainable.
So we're talking of redefining production systems, which means we require new carriers which don't look at the way the capital looks at in terms of accumulation processes as far as it's concerned.
Where do they work? What is the place of work? The place of work is that small house in a slum where they are living. So habitat becomes a very important part. They are not going out anywhere to work. So the place of work, if you look at the place of work, it is the home and the lack of the high cost of basic infrastructure services. So if it is cramped, if there is no light, if she spends 2 hours collecting water, which takes away from her productivity, all these city policies have an impact on her productivity. So city spaces and city homes as sites of production for the informal sector workers.
Under the National Urban Livelihood Mission, there is so much money lying with the municipal bodies, and they are not financing, they are not giving money. They are not giving money, so where does a poor person go? When I hear all your issues, as an association, I just think about how do we solve those issues, and we don't really know, from changing perspective to changing laws to getting those bylaws being prepared. Now under the Street Vending Act, we were successful in getting the act in 2014.
What do we do to take all this and to take it to the next step and have South Asia level discussions of Habitat 3, where we know that there are these 20 laws that we are dealing with, 20 laws that have to be translated into bylaws, into building codes, into spaces for street vendors, into NACA spaces for domestic workers, into livelihood centers for construction workers. So these translation of these laws to master plans to things in the present and the physical have to be done. So this government has no plan at all that what they want to see that. And again, recently the Gujarat government again started giving some sort of card again 2008 Act, informal sector workers. Now they're giving the green card and yellow card. So green card represents some domestic workers, and yellow card represents some agricultural workers. So no one has any clue about that what they want to do. So what I see this entire politics is that government has no need and no intention to recognize this population who are coming to the cities and whatever we call that, provide the social security. Once they're calling in
the engine of economic growth, calm and etc. But on the other side, politics is completely different. It's completely bizarre. I don't think so that we are heading anywhere. I don't think so we have any iota of change.
There's a whole production unit ecology which we haven't looked at, which are taking place from like 15 people working from one room and in absolutely deplorable conditions of health, very poor wages, no insurance. There's an entire set of issues related to production. There is also the issues which are related to its vending, which is the commercial end of that whole thing.
One of the things that we've been sort of arguing is, half the population that should live in cities. Ahmedabad is going to go to 13 million people. What vote do the 6.5 billion people that are not there today have? Right? And then out of the 6 million people that are there, the 3 million have come in the last 20 years. They don't, if you ask them where they belong to, they'll say, I'm from so and so place. So this whole, there is only 15-20% of the population consider themselves as urban natives. And, they are, so how do you actually bring together all of the people in the cities to help making this? So
they should do the same thing. Economists are not trained to understand what is an ecosystem. They're not trained to see what they see as the resources of the world, of the economy, are actually the sources of life. And when we destroy the ecosystem, so for example with water, and many people have talked about water today, but in a way you shouldn't be calling any project a development project when it's lowering or damaging or polluting the groundwater or the water sources. I mean, you should only call any project a development project when it's actually increasing and enhancing people's water security.
New governance institutions like the SPVs or smart cities, which some people have also spoken about today, are clearly an arbitrary to the 74th Amendment and have taken us many steps back in the aspects of participatory planning. Community resources in both rural and urban landscapes are under threat, and community, which was once caretaker and stakeholder, is excluded in the process of development.
The rural habitat has evolved based on this understanding, but it is now undergoing morphological destabilization. Perhaps the cause lies in the change in considering the human condition as an economic condition and the consequent shift of planning parameters to become overwhelmingly economic. We have allowed the rural habitat to be exploited for economic surplus to be transferred to the cities. Rural people have been marginalized and now aspire to become urbanites, which leads to the growth of urban slums and increasing social injustice.
In these kind of systems, it works until the community is there, but once new appropriators start coming in and they don't have the shared values, it starts to fail. And those are problems which are mostly faced by these kind of systems.
This whole business of policy and government, and that we work with them to achieve particular things, because you just go back to where you started and possibly in a worse state. That's what I have to say.
So we can talk about cities consuming a lot of water, but that's water goes to the to agriculture, and then it is imported into the city as virtual water, embodied water in the food. I made calculations of this, and we find that if I take the urban an average urban Indian male's diet, we have a consumption of 1800 liters of water per day per person, which is that is the embodied water. That embodied water is consumed by rural people as well.
In terms of the municipality, these urban villages tend to have one survey number, because that's how it used to be under the rural records. Only the fields would have a separate revenue number. So it's one large survey number. The municipality says we can't tax them properly. So we can't tax them, how do we service them? Then they say it's still winding and organic, we cannot put services in because you need sort of gridiron roads to do it. So all these kind of challenges come in and they remain unserviced, ungovernable, and sort of left to decline in many ways.
We've created like WhatsApp groups, websites, Facebook pages where the entire neighborhood has started interacting. So it's a kind of an organic thing that's happening now, where everyone who's involved talks to each other on WhatsApp and says, okay, there is this problem in the neighborhood, nobody's picked up the waste here. I know someone in the ULB and I'll talk to them.
According to legislation, doesn't have provision for participation, and that's a huge gap. So let's talk about bridging that gap.
making legislation changes, providing capacity, funding, time for participatory and inclusive planning in local governments and planning agency alike. Development authorities are a little bit better. Those cities where the planning is being done by development authorities have more money, more staff. But local governments, where plans are not being made, do not have a single urban planner. Please note that the city is composed of different communities, different mosaics, which will need different ways of participation, different ways of acting, empowerment, and so on and so forth. So we can't say this is good or that is bad and this is what has to be done. And so we need everything, really.
I wish to extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all the chairs and speakers for getting their important work and sharing their opinion in helping us in shaping the agenda of Indian civil societies for the Habitat 3.